Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be talking about some tips and tricks for how to read more. So firstly, I just want to say that no matter how much you read, whether you read one book a year or whether you read one book a day, you are a reader and you are valid, and yeah, don't let anyone else shame you for however much you read. Because I feel like sometimes if you're a slow reader then people tend to feel bad, but there's like, you're reading so much more than the majority of the population, even if you only read like one book a year. And then also I feel like I think I read like I read quite a lot. Like I think I read about 250 books in 2020, but like it just, sometimes I feel bad that like, I don't know why I feel bad for like reading so much, but sometimes I do. But like you just have to embrace however much you're going to read, and like that's just you do you. So however much you're happy with reading. But I feel like I just wanted to do some like tips, just because I feel like sometimes people do want to read a bit more but maybe they just don't like have the kind of, I don't know. I just wanted to make this video. And also I just want to say, like, I feel like I read quite a lot because I am not the most independent person. Like I still live at home with my parents. I don't have to like care for children. I don't have a full-time job. I mean, I'm kind of a full-time student, so I do spend the majority of the day like studying or on the wards, but I don't have the kind of responsibilities of like a full-grown adult. I don't know. So yeah, I feel like if you like have a busy job and you're looking after kids, then there's no way you can expect to like read as much. And it's just kind of, yeah, how much free time you have, and you should never feel bad like if you're not reading as much as other people because you have all these responsibilities. Like that's important, I think, to acknowledge that people will be able to read different amounts based on their kind of life circumstances. Like I know when I'm like a med reg, well, I might not be a med reg or a GP reg or something, I no way will I be able to read like 200 books a year. I'll be lucky if I read like 10 books a year. Yeah, so the first thing is not to get overwhelmed by your TBR. So this is kind of easy to do, like especially when you first join BookTube, you'll get like a massive list of books that you want to read, and I feel like it's so easy to just be like overwhelmed. And I feel like sometimes when my TBR is a little bit out of hand, I just get so overwhelmed, like I don't want to read anything, or like I'll start so many books. Okay, that's another point, but I'll start like loads of books and then just get really overwhelmed and like not finish anything, and it'll just be stressful. So yeah, so the thing for that is just, yeah, don't get too overwhelmed by your TBR. Like the books are always going to be there. I guess it's slightly different if you have like a library hold, but you can always request the book and borrow it again. So like books, they're paper, they're not going anywhere, or ebooks, they'll be there forever. So yeah, you're not in any race, you're not in any rush. The books will be there, and just kind of prioritize and like break it down into little chunks. So like if you have like 100 books that you want to read, just think, well, these are the 5 books that I want to read like this week or this month, and just like, yeah, kind of triage your TBR, I guess. Like what's most important to read at first, and then sort of work from there. And yeah, because if you feel like, oh, I've got to read all these books in the next month, and it's like and then sometimes I feel like when you get overwhelmed then you just end up doing nothing. So that's a point, I guess. And then the next one is audiobooks. So no way would I read as much as I did if I didn't listen to audiobooks. Like, I know they're not for everyone, but I love audiobooks, and I feel like they add so much to the reading experience, especially if it's a well done audiobook. So like whenever I go for walks by myself, I will listen to an audiobook. Sometimes if I'm like by myself and like doing the cooking, I'll listen to an audiobook. And cleaning the house, which admittedly I don't do that often, but on the occasions I do, I will listen to an audiobook while I'm doing it. So like traveling on the train, I'll listen to an audiobook. So there's just lots of opportunities, and especially as you get more like experience with audiobooks, you can speed them up a bit. So like I listen to audiobooks on 2 times speed, which I know some people think is like a sin, but I think it's perfectly reasonable. Like 2 times is like a normal talking pace. Like if you listen to them on 1 times speed, they sound like that, so it's really annoying. So yeah, so they it's like that scene with the sloth from Zootopia. Oh god, I hate that scene. But yeah, so audiobooks, and they're a really good way to kind of read books. And yeah, Okay, then next we have like tips for reading a big book, like a big chunky, let me find one. I don't even know where they are. Okay, we'll have the Well of Ascension here. So big chunky fantasy. Actually, I have a pre, so this is Either World. Okay, so basically is to split, so like this is a massive like 750 page book or whatever, and it's basically to split it into small chunks so you feel like you're achieving something when, because I feel like if you like, so generally, so this one I have markers at each 100 page mark, but generally I'll put them at each 50 page mark, but I just, this was for a buddy read. Sorry Aaron. But I'm only at page 100 so far as of filming this. Hopefully by the time this video goes up I will have read more. But yeah, so just having those like markers, and then you have something to try and get to. So like if you have a 50 page marker, then maybe you'll read 50 pages, whereas if you just sort of sat down and read, then you might have only read 40 pages, and then you feel like you're achieving stuff, like you're like, oh, I'm at the marker already. And whereas if you have the whole book, you'll be like, oh, I'm hardly through the book but I've read 200 pages. So yeah, so breaking down bigger fantasies into little chunks is a really good way to sort of read bigger books. And also sometimes if I'm really struggling to get through a big book, I will listen to the audiobook alongside reading, and I feel like that just helps you, because the audiobook it keeps going, so it just keeps you going I guess is the way that works. I don't know, it seems to work for me. So sometimes like really kind of lyrical books, like I think Queen's of Innis Leah by Tessa Grattan, I listened to the audiobook and like read along because I was struggling to get through it. But it's a really good book, like it's very lyrical, but it just takes a bit of perseverance. Okay, then the next one is slightly controversial maybe, but so it's to have more than one book like on your currently reading. So admittedly sometimes my currently reading does get out of hand, like 10 books, which is maybe a bit much, so don't let it get too out of hand. But like having a few options to choose from is really helpful, because if you're not in the mood for a certain book, then you can read a different book. And I just feel like that kind of I don't know, that just sort of makes you more likely to read. Because like if you only let yourself read one book at a time, and then, well, I guess some people reading one book at a time works for them, and that's great. Like however you read, you're perfectly like valid, and I love you, I support you. But for me anyway, yeah, all these tips are for me, what works for me, so I'll just say that. But so yeah, so if you only read one book at a time, then if you read, like if you're in the evening and you're like in the mood for reading, but then you just feel like you're not really in the mood for that book, so if you were only reading that book, then I might like put the book down and just do something else for the evening. Whereas if you have another book that you're maybe more in the mood for, then you can read that one, and then you'll be reading basically when maybe previously you wouldn't have been. And also along those same lines is sometimes I will start like a few books all in one like evening reading session, I guess, and then whichever book I sort of am feeling the most, I will continue on with that one. So like I might get to 10% in like 3 different books, but then one of them I'll sort of carry on with and then finish that one, and then go on the next one and finish that. Because generally with like currently reading, why it gets out of hand is like I'll always be like near the beginning of quite a lot of books, and then I'll choose one and sort of read that, and then that's how I think it kind of works for me. I don't know if that, well, like let's summarize that into a cohesive tip. So if you're not in the mood for a certain book, don't force it, and you can start reading another book without putting the current book down, but you can also DNF books. So yeah, so that's the next tip. If you're not feeling a book, just DNF it. I'm so bad at doing this, but I feel like it's, I mean, sometimes I do like soft DNF, so I will just put a book down intending to go back to it, but I'll never get back to it. So yeah, so yeah, don't be afraid to DNF books if you're not enjoying it, because ultimately reading, at least the kind of reading like I do, is for enjoyment and fun, like fiction reading, or not even non-fiction, but like not like educational reading. So yeah, if you're not enjoying a book, just put it down. Like it's not gonna affect your life in any way. So yeah. Then another one is to like join reading sprints, especially if you find yourself getting distracted easily, because I feel like that gives you like a short set of time to like read, and then you read for that time, and then you have a little break so you can like let your mind wander or whatever. And that keeps it quite structured. So that's another good way to like get some reading done. And yeah, sometimes I, like, when I'm reading myself, I generally read for an hour and then like have a 5 minute like little break, and then I'll read like for another hour and then have a 5 minute break. But I feel like often reading sprints are a bit shorter than that, which is also good, especially because I feel like reading for an hour is quite long. So like build yourself up slowly, and also don't feel like you have to read like a whole book in one sitting. Like it just, yeah, so that's another point. So when you're like sitting down to read, have a little goal in mind. So you'll be like, in this reading session I want to read 50 pages, or I want to read 10% of this book, and then sort of have that goal and like work towards it, I guess. And then that also give you something to achieve, and then once you've achieved that, then you feel proud of yourself, so you want to read more. So like I also do this by like in my Kindle, I'll see how much percentage I read an hour, and then I'll try and like hit that percentage each hour that I read. And then that sort of, so then instead of like thinking, oh, I've got 100% of this book left to get, you're like, oh well, I've got 15% to read this hour, and then the next hour, oh, I have to get to 30%, and then it kind of, so you're just like breaking it down into little chunks. I feel like really helps me read more. And then sometimes the thing to do is to read a short book, because I feel like you get endorphins from finishing a book. Like there's just something like when you finish a book and you feel proud of yourself. So sometimes, especially if you're in like a reading slump, it's good to like finish a short book and then you feel like, oh, I finished it. Like a novella is really good for just kind of, you've read the story and you just, then you're proud of yourself for finishing. So yeah, so that's a good way to sort of give yourself a bit of like reading motivation. And there's something else like motivation, because I feel like motivating helps read more, and that is like watching booktube videos and seeing people get excited about books, and I feel like that always makes me want to read books more, especially when you see someone's kind of excitement for the book. That's really interesting. And then also, so on that point, so there's always loads of memes, which is like when people get new books and then all their old books are like looking at them, like, you know that meme where it's like there's two girls and then the boy's like, or I don't know what it is, but like, but that said, like, embrace your excitement. So if you get a new book and you're really excited to read it, then I would say read it there and then. Like, don't put it off because you have all these other books to read. If you're excited for a book, then read it there and then, because then you will read that book and you will enjoy that book, and that's still a book you've read. Like, don't let the pressure of your like backlist TBR get you down. Yeah, kind of embrace the excitement for the book you want to read at that moment. So I guess that's kind of like mood reading. Don't be like strict with yourself and like have to stick to this TBR, which I'm so bad at sticking to my TBRs, but like, yeah, so that's kind of that point. I feel like these are a bit like chaotic, but I'm a chaotic person, so yeah. So I kind of touched on this slightly earlier, but like schedule time for reading. So have a specific like time of day maybe where you read, or like in when you're planning your day, because I don't really plan my days like far in advance. I just kind of come up with it on the spot, but like if just think like this evening I want to read from like 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. and then that will kind of motivate you to like have that reading time. So yeah, that's kind of, and that's similar to reading sprints, like especially if you're joining reading sprints on YouTube, you can be like, right, I'm going to read during this time. So yeah, that's kind of a point on that. But I think that's all I can think of for now. Let me know any of your like good tips for reading more in the description. Oh, not the description. In the comments. I would love to know, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you next time.